Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining us for today's video. So the topic that I want to talk about today is vegan fashion and plant-based fashion. So I wanted to do this video for a while actually because we see the words vegan fashion used a lot more and more commonly in the fashion industry, and we've started to see the words plant-based fashion, and there's the beginnings of some confusion about the two different terms and what they mean and also how they relate to fashion. Obviously they're terms commonly used with food, so there's some confusion about what it actually means for different types of material. So I basically wanted to use today's video to talk about this topic, break down the different terminologies and to let you guys know which kind of materials that they apply to, just so you can know when you go out shopping what it is that you're meant to be looking for, if you do want to shop vegan fashion or if you're looking for plant-based fashion, and the main differences between the two. So before we get started with today's video, I did just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has subscribed so far. Really appreciate it. I'm keen to keep this community growing, so if you are watching this video and you enjoy the content, please do subscribe, and if you hit that notification bell then you will get notified every Monday when the new video comes out. Okay, so let's jump into it. What I wanted to start with was talking about the differences between vegan and plant-based first of all. So in terms of diet, obviously as a vegan you can't eat any meat or any poultry or any fish. You also can't have eggs, gelatin, honey or any dairy products. Okay, and then plant-based is a diet that consists primarily or entirely of plant-based foods. This can mean that a person can be plant-based but they could still occasionally have meat or dairy, but that it doesn't take up the majority of the foods that they eat. They mostly focus on having whole foods, so that's vegetables, fruits, beans, legumes, grains, and then like nuts and seeds and oils for fats. So plant-based is different to vegan because they are allowed to eat kind of any foods that they want, but they make sure that the majority of the foods that they consume are plant-based foods. Okay, so what do these terms have to do with fashion? Vegan fashion basically refers to any item of clothing that contains no animal-derived products or ingredients at all. As I've said in previous videos, the kind of main materials that we avoid would be like leather, suede, wool, fur, exotic animal skins, and also silk. Vegan fashion does also mean that the clothes can be made of any other material that doesn't come from an animal. So then if we look at plant-based fashion, what this is referring to is any material that is derived from some form of plant. A good definition that I found for plant-based clothing is any clothes that are made from materials derived from plants such as eucalyptus trees, cork trees, the hemp plant, or even byproducts of fruits. So like it says on the tin, really, plant-based fashion is any clothing that isn't synthetic and is actually made from a naturally occurring material. But it's also worth noting that plant-based fashion cannot derive from an animal because an animal is not a plant. Don't know if you needed to know that, you probably didn't, but yeah, there's that. Okay, so what kind of materials are we talking about with these different kind of terms? So starting with vegan fashion, as I said, it can come from any kind of synthetic, so kind of like PU leather, which is made from like crude oil that's been refined down, polyester. It can be really any material that just doesn't come from an animal, so that can be both something that's synthetic but also something that's naturally occurring like cotton. Whereas with plant-based fashion, we are referring to materials that have come directly from a plant. So a large majority of these are called cellulose fabrics. So cellulose is a kind of fibrous material that's made from things like leaves, bark and wood pulp. But increasingly with plant-based fashion, we are seeing new things come through, especially with waste from the food industry. One fabric that a lot of you may have heard of is kind of like pineapple leather or citrus leather. We're now having things like grape leather. A lot of these come from waste products that are from the wine industry, the fruits industry, the fruit juice industry, things like that. These are great obviously because they're using existing materials. They're not kind of adding a new process in, it's just making use of something that was going to be thrown away. So just to put that into context, you can take something like a leather alternative, so you can have both a vegan version of leather and a plant-based version of leather. The vegan option could be anything that's made from any kind of synthetic material, so like PU leather, PVC, polyester that's turned into a faux leather. Whereas a plant-based leather, you would have something like pineapple leather or Pinatex, but you can also have things like grape leather and mushroom leather as well. And we see this a lot with footwear and accessories and bags and things. So one of the reasons that I think people are talking about these two terms when we talk about vegan fashion and plant-based fashion is that vegan fashion has kind of got a bad rap over the past few years because it's been accused of greenwashing. So like I said, because anything that's classed as vegan fashion just has to not contain animals, it doesn't necessarily make it a sustainable material. So as I said, things could be made from polyester, which make it technically vegan, but we all know that polyester is a really damaging material and we really shouldn't be creating new garments made from brand new polyester. So that's where I think that the term plant-based fashion could be really useful to talk about clothing within the vegan fashion sphere, to differentiate the different kinds of materials that we're using, to show that some are from naturally occurring sources and some are from synthetic materials. The main differences in terms of their sustainability with vegan fashion and plant-based fashion is largely around the processes involved in creating the different materials. For example, polyester, PU leather, things like that, they originally come from crude oil, which originally comes from fossil fuels. So, you know, we don't want to be encouraging the use of any fossil fuels in fashion. It also requires a lot of toxic chemicals to produce these, and there's a lot of wastage, which include like toxic chemicals being released into the water. A lot of water in general goes into making these materials. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys a quick example of the kind of things that I'm talking about. So here is an item of clothing that I own, which is vegan fashion. So you can't really see it very well, but it is a wrap top. It's from a fast fashion brand that I bought over 5 years ago, I think, so I can't remember where I got it from. Yeah, so it's just kind of like this wraparound blouse with this nice bright print, but it is made of 100% polyester. So because there's no animal materials in this, this is classed as vegan fashion, but it doesn't make it sustainable. So this is classed as an unsustainable item of clothing because it contains microfibers and microplastics that release in the wash. It also required the use of crude oils to be produced, as well as different toxic chemicals that went into the process as well. So while this is vegan fashion, it certainly isn't sustainable. Whereas these are my Womp trainers made of apple leather. They are a bit dirty, so please excuse me. So this is made from apple leather instead of leather, and it also has apple suede at the front. So this is instead of cow's leather. So these trainers are made from apple leather, and I believe that the apple comes from the waste industry in terms of like making apple juice. It's kind of like the leftover pulp and skin that doesn't get used. As an alternative to cow's leather, these are more sustainable. It's making use of a product that is already in existence instead of making a new material. It didn't require the life of an animal to be sacrificed to make them. It also doesn't require the land use, the water, the chemicals that go into using cow's leather. It bypasses all of that. I do believe that there is still elements of like plastic still in these. So, you know, like the lining may still be polyester, the sole is rubber, which is the same across different shoes. So in some ways it can be still comparable to vegan fashion, but the primary material that's made with this is apple leather. So that is a much more sustainable product to be using than cow's leather. So this is an example of how plant-based fashion can actually be the more sustainable option. So when we talk about the different sustainability of materials, it's important to remember that we need to look at cradle to gate. So we need to look at the very beginning of how a material is made to the very end, and even beyond that. So like I talked about microfibers being released. So what's the material going to be like once it's in your care, in the wash, end of life, that kind of thing as well. So there is still ongoing conversations about what materials are truly more sustainable. It's a difficult question to get one answer to because we're constantly finding more information and doing more research into the effects that materials have on the environment. But you know, as a vegan, I have no need to use animals for fashion. Ethically, it's not something that I agree with. So I am trying to find more sustainable alternatives that are vegan fashion. So plant-based fashion does seem like a really good alternative because not only does it not include any animals, but the materials are from naturally occurring sources. I think, to be honest, we could do a whole other video breaking down the different kind of sustainability levels of both vegan fashion and plant-based fashion, talking about lots of different materials in more depth. So let me know in the comments if that's something that you would like to talk about a bit more, and I can do a whole other video on that. So there we have it. We've kind of covered the main differences between vegan fashion and plant-based fashion. So now if you see those terms, you can kind of differentiate between the two. And depending on what kind of clothes you are looking for, that might help you inform your decision a little bit better. All right, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful in some way. If you did enjoy it, please like the video, comment, share. Especially if there's someone that you know that is looking into vegan fashion or just generally trying to shop a bit more sustainably, this might help them, especially if they've been a bit confused about what the different kind of terms mean. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and if you hit that notification bell then you'll get to know every time the videos drop on Mondays. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you have any questions as well you can message me on there. Alright, thank you guys so much for joining me in this week's video. I hope you have a great week and I will see you in the next video. Bye!